Kitchen is so hard to clean. If only there was an easier way.
New kitchen gun! Sparkles like new! Yeah, all clean again! Sparkles like new! I love you, kitchen gun! Just 3 shots from kitchen gun. Say goodbye now! Yeah, all clean again! Sparkles like new!
Square of one side plus the square of the other side is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. In other words, a squared plus b squared equals c squared.
Kakarot, you slept with my wife. What the fuck? Sorry, Vegeta, but I have over 2 million power and state to survive.
To find your dreams, and I point down.
Moderators? This peasant is disturbing my tea time. Please get rid of them right now.
Oi, why are you disrespecting me, bruv? My mistake, original gangster. No, this cannot be forgiven. Now empty the compartments of your pantaloons. For what purpose? And discard of your footwear. For what purpose? In fact,
I have your IP, your home address too, your government files say a lot about you. The other side, say goodbye. And tell me that it happened that long days of life, I say they instantly be sorry, they know that nothing to die. And they know this is, I know this is the truth, cause I've been staring at my gut so many times. It's very knows it's no making the halls and consequences, it's got the doors to stay in bed until the sun will shine. So my last was on, stay young, so young, I never said they never let on them line. Down on, but it wasn't done, don't let it leave the sound that inside. Doesn't mean I know, it's time beyond, we stay away from some that's not the sign. But it knows of songs, can tell not dawn, the dawn that is in without the night.
Babe, please stop. I don't want to know the My Singing Monsters lore. So in the first game, My Singing Monsters, there are 5 main natural elements: cold, plant, water, and earth. This acted as the basis for all of the major islands, with the exception of Ethereal Island, which is surprisingly not that important to the lore. However, upon the release of Tribal Island, it was hinted at that there was a long-lost fire element, because if you got your tribal rank to a certain level, the amber on the island melts to free Akaina, the single fire element monster. This is where we get to Dawn of Fire. Dawn of Fire is supposed to take place hundreds of years before the original game, back when the fire element was still perfectly thriving. It also reveals the continent, which is essentially the My Singing Monsters equivalent of Pangea. The continent has the clear beginnings of plant, cold, air, water, and earth island, but at this point they were all connected. The other islands in Dawn of Fire consisted of Fiery Island, Space Island, Cloud Island, and Cave Island, which you send monsters to by leveling them up. Remember these islands, they'll be important later. For now, we take note of the fact that between Dawn of Fire and My Singing Monsters, something happens to drive the fire element to near extinction. We know that the continent at some point splits, and given how there is no actual fire-subject part of it, it can be assumed that without a natural island to call home, the fire element was unable to survive. Luckily, a small portion of the fire element monsters took refuge in a large volcano-like structure, which was hidden away from the monster world. It apparently was nearby Tribal Island, though, as we see monsters dig a tunnel into the volcano in order to discover it, and it would explain kinda being locked in amber outside there. This volcano is, of course, Firehaven. Because fire monsters have been gone for so long, they are more valuable and harder to breed than in Dawn of Fire. Clearly, even though they had miraculously survived for so many years, the fire element was unable, and is still unable, to thrive. So the monsters create fire oases in order to create another space for the fire monsters to thrive on. The rediscovery of fire monsters caused a ripple effect of monsters going on searches for more and more islands, knowing now that there was more out there. This is how the magical islands are found. The magic islands are heavily implied to be warped versions of the outer islands from Dawn of Fire. I told you to remember them. Possibly because of being abandoned, some magical source uses energy to meld and craft them to its liking, and create monsters that would be fitting for those islands. AKA, the magical class of monsters isn't entirely natural, and only exists because of this odd source of power. This is why there are no Celestials that represent light, psychic, fairy, or bone. Speaking of the Celestials, they are extremely important to the story. In Dawn of Fire, we first see them on Starhenge, a large, ancient structure in the sky that is home of the Celestials. The Celestials themselves are said to be older than time, basically being the ultimate representation of certain elements. They are essentially gods of their elements. The elements they represent all have constellations that can only be seen during the specific months of the year, and this is, of course, when specific Celestials are most powerful / being represented. The elements represented are the 6 natural elements, the 5 ethereal elements, and finally, electric, the most powerful element represented by the Celestials. Galvana, the actual electric Celestial, follows this line of logic of electricity being powerful, and is the de facto leader of the Celestials. She is also the only one to not appear with significant age, still looking very young despite living just as long as her peers. Further evidence that Galvana is by far the most powerful is that Wobox, the main electric monster, is said to have been created by Galvana, meaning prior to creating Wobox, Galvana may have been the only electric monster, being so much more powerful than any monster before it. Even the Wublins, the only other electric monsters, were created by the Wobox. Given how both Wobox and the Wublins were artificially created, and both need other monsters' life energy in order to become alive, it can be concluded that the electric element has no natural monsters, hence being supernatural. Everything for the Celestials seemed to be going good, and Starhenge is implied to have been operating perfectly fine during the events of My Singing Monsters, up until Starhenge crashed. It is unknown the full reason for crashing, but it's likely that due to the dwindling power of the fire element, Starhenge could not function properly anymore, and so it crashed. When it crashed, the Celestials turned to stone, and for all intents and purposes, it died. However, by putting the essences of monsters into them via eggs, they can be revived, or rather, reborn. When you free a Celestial in the game, it turns into a baby of itself, showing that instead of just going back to normal, the Celestials have been reincarnated into these new forms, and finally, after millions of years in their old forms, they are finally young again. It's worth noting that there's a difference between how Celestials are revived and how Wublins come to life. While they both require eggs to cause them to come to life from statues, the Wublins are likely just using the life energy or souls of the monsters in order to be alive in the first place. Remember, they are just statues Wobox made, so he had to find some way to make them alive. Celestials, on the other hand, are heavily implied to have died in their stone states, and they require eggs from monsters related to their element. Therefore, the Celestials required an essence and energy power enough to revive themselves using their own elements.